Wakanda forever. Good morning, everybody. It's the pollinator, and I'm making a video. See, I always say this, but I don't do it. That I'm making a video at a stupid hour of the morning, and that I'm not going to upload it until after I've got some rest. And then after I make them, I get real. I just have to upload it, so I end up awake until long after the sun comes up because it takes a long time to upload these. The reason why it does is because I have a very old modem and the Wi-Fi signal is very slow, so it takes a while for them to be uploaded with my phone. But anyway, guess what? I forgot. I do have a fucking hat that fits my, what did I say last time? My peanut head. I actually do have a hat that I can wear backwards that doesn't look silly and have, you know, a great big hole in the front. So I'm wearing that. Listen, I keep forgetting to do this when I make these videos, so I'm going to do it now while I'm thinking about it, which is, you know, hit that subscribe button and press on that like button for me a few times. What that does is propagate out into the YouTube world that, you know, your video is in existence. It just, somehow it just lets other people know you're there. And there's other people that would like to hear what I have to say, and they don't necessarily see that because I don't have a monetized channel after they change the rules of monetization and getting paid for your videos. I don't have enough subscribers to for that, and I'm not paying YouTube to promote my channels or other people to do that. So if you hit that like button, share it in as many places as you feel like doing that, that would help me out a lot. So if and there's also a link in the description of these videos that if you'd like to, you know, throw a brother a couple of dollars, that would be cool too. I don't make lives because I don't have the proper software to make them. I'd have to get onto some other kind of platform in order to do that with my phone without a great big lag in the live on YouTube. My phone can't handle that at all. I've tried it a few times and it just failed, instant fail. So I'm going to talk about something that I told a guy in particular, a trans man, that I would talk about. And it is not going to be an easy subject to talk about. And I'm going to express, in my opinion and my theories, why it is not an easy thing to talk about or to for people to take on. I actually wanted to do a collaborative live with trans men talking about this, but I don't know if they've got the balls to do it. I don't know if they've got the courage to do it, and I don't know if they've got the spoons to do it. Most of them that I've approached with doing a live about this are too probably afraid of judgment and afraid of getting into it with transgender women. But that is the subject of this video, is transgender men versus transgender women. Why do I bring this up? Last time, my last video, I talked about kind of the pecking order in society today, where, you know, you got the white people on top, you got the Asians somewhere beneath them, you've got the Hispanics somewhere beneath them, and then you've got the Native Americans under them, and then you've got the black people on the bottom, who have been getting the shit kicked out of them for over 400 years. A lot of the other POCs, people of color, like to argue these facts. They like to say, nah, we got it worse than you guys do, and blah, 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 and they're full of shit. All they got to do is live in our place for maybe a day, two, a week, and they'll realize they ain't experiencing nothing like what we're experiencing. the ones I'm thinking of in particular are Native Americans who don't realize that just the fact that they have access to land and their native languages, that puts them in a category that places them somewhere above in the pecking order of society today. Then you've got all these communities within the particular races in this country that have a pecking order. Okay, so, but, and me, this topic of talking about transgender men versus transgender women is really not particular to any kind of race. It is particular to the genders and the hierarchy of what the socialization they were raised with, where it put them in that pecking order before they transitioned. And I'm not going to necessarily, well, I may talk about it in terms of race, I may not. Because there is something peculiar going on between black transgender men and black transgender women that I've also noticed, but to a lesser degree, with white transgender women. Although it could be argued that they virtually do the same thing to trans men as black transgender women do too. All of the transgender women are doing the same thing to trans men. What are they doing? They're emasculating us as though they are feminists. So all of a sudden, they're taking on the attitude of their cisgender counterparts when it comes to men. But what makes it worse on the transgender end of things is that I'm going to say it, whether people like it or not, I'm going to say it, that many transgender transgender women are trying to treat transgender men like they're women. And what does that mean? Many of us, especially my age range, which is, I'm in my 60s. When I was growing up, I was treated like I was to be seen and not heard. I was treated with less respect than boys, biologically born boys. I was treated like what I said wasn't as important. I was treated as if, they took all the goodies and gave us the leftovers. Women are treated differently than men in society. The socialization that many transgender women got was as men. That may change in the next 50 years, 100 years, but because when it becomes more acceptable for transgender children to go ahead and live in the transition they know, as the gender they know themselves to be at an earlier age. Until that happens, they are being raised as biologically born boys are raised as boys, and biologically born women are raised as women or girls. And then there's this certain attitude towards them. They're not part of the conversations that are going on with men, even girls that they consider tomboys. They could play with the boys, hang out with the boys, but there were things that were being said out of range of those girls that they weren't included in on those particular kinds of conversations while those girls were present. Does this sound familiar? It's the same thing as racism. What these white people are saying amongst each other is different than what they would say if there was a black person present most of the time. Not all of the time, but most of the time they will not say the bullshit that they say to each other about us with in our presence. It's a whole bunch of cowards hiding behind the internet. They're talking a lot of big shit, stupid shit that they would never say with us in their face. By the same token, there's a lot of things being said by transgender women that are out of our ear range, but there's beginning to talk about what they think, how they think, what they expect of trans men. It really feels like in the community, in the transgender community, it's just the exact same thing that's going on in the LGBT community, which is much, much bigger than just the transgender community, and how that community is letting black people tag along without really throwing them a bone, without throwing them resources, without fighting for them, without being enraged about the things that are happening to them. The exact same thing is going on a smaller scale between transgender women and transgender men. By virtue of their socialization as men, they've got the jump on all of the resources, usually through projects, and usually through the socialization and the opportunities that they got as men until they transitioned, okay? And as a result of their transition, they lost a little privilege. And boy, are they taking that out on trans men, because trans men gain a little privilege by sheer virtue of transitioning to men. So you got all these anti-males running around, be they cisgender lesbians or transgender women. Anti-male to the point of wanting to emasculate you every time they turn around. I had a conversation with a transgender woman who I guess was flirting with me, but I wasn't sure exactly. And I can't remember which happened first, but I wanted, first of all, I don't date transgender women on a whole. And there's this narrative going on amongst them, especially the black transgender women, that transgender men date transgender women more than they don't. I couldn't agree with that. I disagree. I disagree that that is an accurate narrative. I think it's the other way around. Many of us thought we were lesbians before we realized we were transgender men. And the majority of them that I know don't date transgender women, and if they do it for convenience. They do it because they're able to have children with them, if the transgender women still have their, their penis, and that supposedly they are able to relate better with a transgender man because we understand what this transition thing is all about, and maybe there's a meeting of the minds about that, about not having to explain things that the other communities around the world don't know and don't understand about what it is to transition. To me, that isn't buying a whole lot. The fact that they know what it's like, because they still don't know what it's like. They aren't trying to understand trans men any better than trans men are trying to understand transgender women, unless they do date one. And then I have to ask, well, exactly what is that about? Are they really attracted to them, or is it a convenience thing? So I happened to be in this seminar when this thing broke out. This transgender woman took it upon herself to make a live on Fuckerbook about a supposed rape that happened during an event in a particular city. And the transgender woman was totally victim blaming him. And she had no idea what it was like, what it is like to be a sexual object like that, like people with vaginas have. And she went so far as to say that that trans man was experiencing vagina privilege. What? Privilege? The fuck did that mean, right? Women are not privileged. And people, we call them AFABs, assigned female at birth, are not privileged gender. And what about that? What about a rape is privileged? This lady had it all wrong, had it all ass backwards, but she was capitalizing on this guy's trauma. And there were a whole bunch of people in there, a whole bunch of trans men in there that were getting triggered by the things that she was saying because they had experienced some form of sexual abuse, be it rape or molestation or whatever. Maybe when they were younger, maybe, you know, as adults, whatever. They were being triggered. And I only watched about 5 to 10 minutes of that before I even got triggered because of the insensitivity of that transgender woman about what happened between those two at an event. And I was disgusted, actually, because how dare she speculate that because of the things that happened, and I'm not going to repeat the things that happened because then people will start that bullshit all over again because they'll know who I'm talking about and what I'm talking about. But it ended up getting all over the community, and people were talking about it, and the guy that it actually happened to ended up making comments in there saying that, you know, you guys weren't there, you don't know what happened, and basically told a little story about what happened. And you could see very clearly he was being traumatized just by the nature of that live itself, because there were a couple of transgender women in it talking about, you know, he must have wanted it because of the night before, and just all this shit that had nothing to do with anything. But again, transgender women, for the most part, aren't asking us to the table of, they want us to hang around as an extension of them, but not distinct as trans men, but just, you know, do certain things for them and then just forget about us otherwise. Just like the LGBTQ will use transgender people at their discretion and throw them away when they're no longer useful to them. Transgender women are doing the same thing to transgender men, and they don't think we can see it, but we do. And then if we say something about it, they want to gang up on us and slap us down to shut the fuck back up, right? They don't want us to have a voice. They don't want us to have equality. They only want us to be in that fight to serve their purposes of gaining whatever in society, even though they are the target of murders. Black transgender women are the target of murders in the United States, and yet they want us to be enraged about their situation without being understanding or inclusive of what we go through too. Trans men go through something else because it's not as clear in society what we are as it is them. But we go through our own version of stuff that they have no idea, because they're not trying to understand us that way, and they aren't treating us like men that they respect the same way they were respected and honored and heard when they were growing up as boys, being treated like boys anyway, being socialized as boys, and then men. Then they transition, and now they're fucking pissed off at us when we don't have anything to do with what society does. You know what I mean? Yes, male privilege exists. Yes, the lack of it exists for women. But when you're white, you've got both. Before we even have a little bit as transgender men, black transgender men have even less than white transgender men, or Hispanic, or Asian, or Native American. Well, I'm not going to say Native American. I'm going to leave them out of that discussion. But they have, there's just all these pecking orders everywhere. There's patriarchy everywhere. And they don't spend much time thinking about that before they open their fucking mouth and sound stupid as hell, or offensive, or anything else that they're trying to do by smacking us down and emasculating us any chance they get. You emasculate a man, what good is he going to be to you? You don't know how to treat a man. And they know how to. But here's the rub. They don't want to because they know what that was before they transitioned. They knew what that privilege was. And they're pissed off because they lost some, so they're not going to stroke our egos. Because somewhere in the deep recesses of their mind, they still treat us like women. And they're not going to try to do us any favors, ask us to the table. They're getting all the publicity and the spotlight shown on them. And I was talking to a trans man the other day about this, and he said he thought it was because they're more flamboyant. No. Yeah, there's a level of that, but really, fundamentally, they've got all the resources locked down. They've got the media locked down. They've got the attention locked down. And they ain't trying to share that with nobody. Especially not transgender men. Which is why I started doing collaborative lives. And will continue to do them. And I would love to talk about this topic, but you know what? I don't think very many trans men will have the nerve to do it. And be honest and be authentic about how they feel about the way they're being treated in society. And I don't think I would include white trans men in that, in a life like that either, because they're getting treated. A lot of them love to go stealth, and so they're pretending they're cisgender men, and they're getting the privileges of white cisgender men. So they don't want to, what do they know about being a black transgender man? Not a damn thing. We're getting the leftovers in that area, too. For real. I get more of them up in my fucking face. Well, theoretically in my face on social media. They can't get physically in my face, but they're in my face and trying to put me in a place because I must appear to them to be an uppity Negro. I'm one of these, I don't give a flying fuck that I alienate any of them. I don't. Because I know they're not on my side for the most part. And in a firefight, they'd leave my ass hanging in the wind. And I already know that. It's not a judgment call. It's a, I'm not placating and I'm not going to placate them. And either they understand why I don't, or they do. And the ones that do, I don't have issue with. The ones that don't are constantly in debates with me and arguments with me because they don't want to see what I'm talking about. They don't want to own it. They don't want to see it. They're in denial. They've got something going on that's trying to block their head, that they've got a lot more privilege, and that's why they want me to shut the hell up, because I'm getting ready to tell a secret from my vantage point versus theirs. On theirs, they're not trying to tell the secret. The secret is, yeah, they got it a hell of a lot better in society than black transgender men do. And so they want us to be quiet too. So you got this shit going on between transgender women and transgender men. And then you've got a level of that going on among transgender men. this competition for attention, for popularity, for all this bragging rights is, maybe that's a bad word, but you've got all this stuff going on because of humanity, because of how human beings are so fucking desperate for love and attention that they'll do just about anything to get it, because they're not doing it for themselves. So they're looking for external forces to do that. And there's a whole bunch of people that are going along with that. And I'll come along and see that going on over and over and over. And I'll get irritated and throw a bomb in the whole mix. I'll play devil's advocate just to upset that apple cart, because I'm not one of these guys that just go with the flow and do the okey doke thing and just... when I see that, I immediately see what's going on, and that I'm not going to play that game. Either I'll just pass it by, or I'll throw something in there like a bomb and then watch everybody. It's like a rugby game. Somebody throwing a football in the middle, and all these guys jump on it. It's like that. It's like they're playing rugby with their fucking lives and their emotions and what they go through in life and all the whining that I'm hearing and all blah, blah, blah. Every once in a while I say, "What? You know what? You need to count your motherfucking blessings. Try adding an extra layer of being black into the transgender mix. And then see if you still whine about the shit you're whining about." Some of this stuff is pretty ridiculous, what they whine about, because they don't know what it's like to really struggle. They don't know what it's like to not only struggle for the right to life as a transgender person, but to be black on top of that, because that is the first thing that society sees. Don't they realize that? They don't see our gender. They don't know our gender. Now, I'm talking about transgender men, just transgender men. They have, people clock transgender women quicker than they clock transgender men. Somebody has to say something in order for black people to know. And so, generally speaking, lost my train of thought. Damn. I'll play this back and remember what it'll be too late to, and I don't know how to edit videos, so, or I remember what I was going to say and slip it in there and then continue the video. I gotta learn how to do that. I'm perfectly capable of learning how to do that. It's one of those things that I know that I don't know, and I just need to learn how to do it. I need to get my hands on some software and just learn how to edit videos and cut them up and paste them together. So I lost my freaking train of thought. Damn. So I'll just return back to, if transgender women want us to take them as seriously as they want us to, they need to take us as seriously as they want us to take them. No, I'm playing this hierarchy game, and it's just real obvious to me that they want the spotlight on them all the time, and then they don't. Because it's dangerous. I think a lot of transgender men know that, so they insist on being in the background as well. And they're not stepping to the plate of playing full-out male, full-out men. Not feminist men, full-out men. Full-out alpha male, no bullshit, no nothing, balls of steel. Many of them aren't doing that. And then they hide behind, well, everybody gets to define what that is for themselves. There are distinctions called manhood, that I don't care what they say. They're choosing to adopt those or not adopt those for a reason. I was listening to this, I know quite a few trans men that are playing this feminist thing to hold on to their access to women. They're afraid if they act full out male, they'll lose their access to women. mainly lesbians. Now, I got over that a long time ago for a particular reason. Um, I no longer cared whether I was part of that community or not anymore. And I still don't care if I'm part of the LGBTQIA blah, 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 community, because it's all jacked up. Racism is very prevalent. And then you've got sexism inside of the racism, and it's just bullshit. It's just, okay, yeah, okay, for y'all that celebrate Happy Pride Month, I don't. Because it just doesn't feel like it did when we were authentically fighting for the rights of the LGBT. To me right now it looks like a party, and it's very segregated, and it's very, you know what, transgender women are on the top, and y'all transgender men can just hang out if you want to, but we're not going to give you a platform, and if we do, we're just going to invite one of you to stand with 10 of us or some bullshit like that. Just notice the ratio, notice the percentages of the media publicizing and pushing transgender women's narratives. And they still get it wrong. They think transgender women, they misgender them and call them transgender men without realizing they made that boo-boo in the media. But they're being represented nonetheless, even though the media is getting it wrong. Guess who's not getting represented? Transgender men. Especially POC transgender men, and especially under that, black transgender men aren't really being talked about. They're not being represented. They're not being asked to tell their story. We have to push that onto society versus being asked about it. We ain't got no transgender male Janet Mox running around. We've got some prominent transgender men, but if you look at the percentages, it's like, 1 out of every 10 or 15, 20 transgender women that are getting promoted out there in the world, in society. To the point where a lot of people still didn't know transgender men existed in the spectrum of transgender. Didn't know there were men, but no, there's transgender women, because they don't know what's being talked about a lot. And their narratives are being sort of, kind of talked about, kind of. And they control the community. The white transgender women do. They totally do. Y'all guys want to play games with that? Okay, show me evidence otherwise. That's what I want to ask you. Don't show me 1 or 2 transgender men that are in the media and then say, well, see, there's 2 of you. That's tokenism. That's totally tokenism. If you don't know what that is, go look that up on the internet. Yeah, there's a token here and there compared to, the rest of them that are, their narratives aren't being told because they're not in the spotlight. So how do we deal with all of this stuff? People not wanting to be in the spotlight, people wanting to be in the spotlight and not getting their chance to shine. When I look around, even at the Pride events, who is jumping out front with the blue, what do they call them things? Anyway, it's trans women. And they prefer that spotlight and that for it to shine on them versus handing that thing over to a trans man standing next to him. 1 after every 10 of them that are out there. I just see it so clearly. I don't know if anybody else does. I just don't know if people are looking at it objectively and realistically, because it's an observation on my part. I don't have necessarily a judgment about it, except that I see it like the Matrix. I see it like, I just see what's going on. Don't know what to do about it. Don't want to know what to make of it. Don't know the solution to it, except that I'm, doing it. I've got my own movement going on that's led by trans men, and it'll never be led by transgender women until they show our worth out loud in public and really, really step up to the plate for us to join this fight with them. You know, it wasn't this way in the 70s. Even in the civil rights movement, people left their religion and their attitudes at home to fight for civil rights. I don't think I've read one article where you heard any of our leaders of this during the civil rights movement and era talking shit about whether somebody was lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. But I never heard anybody talk about that stuff because they were so busy fighting for the rights of black people. So, yeah, that wasn't there. And it needs to stay out of the conversation as far as I'm concerned. That is what my organization is about, is bringing together everybody regardless of those things, while excluding the non-binary, gender non-conforming stuff that's going on until I see some movement in that area that isn't full of shit, and also jumping on the feminism bandwagon where they don't want us to be men either. They got anti-male stuff going on too, which is why I don't touch them with a 10-foot pole. It's not because I have a problem with them, it's because they've got a problem with us. See, I would respect them if they respect us. Period. Has nothing to do with my lack of understanding. I cape for a lot of people that I don't understand. That has nothing to do with nothing. What it has to do with is I'm not willing to be around a bunch of people that want me to be a part of their organization or part of their cause while they're spitting fire at me at the same time. It ain't gonna happen. That's why I won't join most of the pro-black organizations in this country, because they're spitting fire at us too, because we're LGBTQ whatever. They want us to be part of their shit while they're dogging us out at the same time. And my emotions, for my emotional health, you know what that feels like? That feels like that black man who went undercover for about 8 months in white supremacy. For his mental and emotional well-being, he had to pull out because he couldn't tolerate the abuse he was hearing about himself, people like him. Those white supremacists were tearing black people a new asshole, and he was undercover pretending to be one of them. And he had to pull out of that because there's only so much of that you can take before it's counterproductive in your emotions. You can't stick with that for long. So I'm telling y'all, transgender women, stop doing that to us too. You're just doing the same thing that white supremacists are doing to black people, you're doing to transgender men. Who's willing to talk about this? Trans men. How many of you out there have enough guts to say this shit out loud and follow up with it and collaborate with me in a live to talk about what's really going on? There's so many things that go on from day to day for me. I was in another post on that platform where somebody posed a question about transgender men and transgender women, and everybody was going along, answering her question, and then I popped up out of nowhere and said, nah, most transgender women don't know how to treat transgender men like men. And that excited somebody in there who said, whoa, somebody finally said the truth. Somebody finally knows what's going on around here. I hear the nightmare stories about those two genders hooking up. I've heard them. But everybody was acting like those stories those narratives aren't there when they are. And I was willing to just upset that apple cart and put some shit in there that was like, no. What are you doing? What are you trying to say? And then right after that interaction between me and that person, then other trans men had the courage to jump up and say, no, I don't go that way either. What are you talking about? But until then, everybody was going along with that narrative until somebody had enough nerve to say, what? Nah, I don't know what do you look, what are you looking at to come up with that opinion you came up with or that question you came up with? The answer is no, not most, some. I'm not going to tell you the question. Because then a lot of people will know what group I was in and what post I was talking about. But listen, there's a lot of bullshit going on in the transgender community. I'm calling it out. I'm calling out transgender women to knock off the bullshit, to share the stage. You don't want to share, I don't want to play. Anybody who's played sports, how do you play a team sport with people on the team that aren't team players? For everybody on the team to win. Everybody. It takes everybody on that team to win that is playing on the same team. Now, if you had a bunch of people that weren't playing the game and they were all trying to be coaches, who would be playing the game? And what kind of shape would the people playing be in if there were 5 coaches per player? It ain't gonna work. Gotta have some players. People gotta play the game, not sit on the sideline and speculate, not sit on the sideline and criticize, not sit on the sideline talking shit, not trying to control everything, not trying to run the team, but to play the game. The game is called life. The game is called our rights. The game is called, you know what, we gotta be fighting racism too, black transgender women. All y'all black transgender people can ignore that if you want to. But it is a reality, whether you are in denial about it or not. It's the reality of why black transgender women are getting murdered and nobody is saying anything. It's because they're black. I'm not in denial about that. Anyway, listen, I'm just shooting this shit. I'm just saying what's on my mind. Again, if you like anything about this, you know, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share the wealth, yeah, I'm a realist. I'm gonna talk about stuff that is tough to talk about and to take, and I'm gonna take some hits. And the way that I know I'm taking hits is that people shy away from the stuff, you know, my videos. You know, I can see the statistics, and it's kind of scary to just be as real as I am. But that's the way I'm wired. And with that, I bid everybody adieu. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And like I said, I'm going to try so hard not to upload this right now because I need to get some sleep. And by the time I finish uploading it, it's going to be, it's going to be daylight. And actually, it's starting to get that way right now. So I would be up for a long time. So play with this as you will, as the things that I have said. You know, you can make comments. I do look at all of them and approve them as I see fit. I'm not one of these that encourage bullshit being spoken about in my videos. I'm not. That's my right. I make them. I'm putting my ass on the line. And if I don't feel like taking pot shots, I won't. I won't allow anybody to see them. So, everybody have a good rest of their day, and the Pollinator is out.